do you think a lot of the difference is that so much is under the hood now, that so you don't just automatically have access to everything at your fingertips? Or
No, I don't think it's even that. I think, as I was saying earlier, I think emotionally a lot of it isn't very satisfying. It doesn't sound that great, and you do want things to sound really great.
yeah,
I think, look, this, here we are, we're writing music and the seconds of our life are ticking away. We get like one shot at doing this, writing that tune, producing this record, making the score to this movie. So we want, we want to work with the best musicians. We want to work with the best microphones and the best technology because it's a once in a lifetime chance. So the same consideration has to go into the plugins and the software that we're using. And the problem is, of course, the aesthetic is something really personal. Something, when I was starting out, in London, I was the guy who had a Prophet 5, and I could make a Prophet 5 sound really good. And a friend of mine had a Jupiter 8. And he could make that Jupiter 8 sound fantastic, and I couldn't, and he could make that. Horses for courses.
yeah.
So, these are things that I battle with on a daily basis. But really, I think ultimately, it has to be a satisfying emotional noise that comes out of these things in one way or the other. And there is there's a big difference between going to McDonald's and having a meal and going to somewhere, and having a chef cook you something. And as much as McDonald's is going to tell you that their stuff is fabulous, and it does fill you up, and it can be sort of a guilty pleasure. I've had many of those. But at the end of the day, I'd rather go to like a really good restaurant, have a really good, emotionally more satisfying meal. So I don't know. It's like people still going on. Look, they're releasing another Fairlight at NAMM. I mean, they're releasing the old Fairlight again. And whatever you think of this, but some great music was done with that old thing, and it did have a quality about it. And I don't think it was just luck, and people are talking about the sonic quality of a Series 3 Fairlight, while forgetting that the output stage of that thing was the same filter and I think the same VCA as was in the Jupiter 8 or Prophet 5. I mean, they ran through those, whatever, SSM chips. I mean, that was the filter on the thing, So there wasn't a reason, really, that it should sound that much better than something else because everything else was using the same stuff. But I think there was a design aesthetic, and it's the guys building it. And I think the people who build our instruments, I see them as much as artists as I see them as scientists.
Using that whole concept of the design aesthetic, my understanding is that oftentimes you're whereas in the past people would use orchestras to sweeten, say, rock instruments. Now it's my understanding is that you will oftentimes bring samples in to sweeten an orchestra. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, there are a lot of factors that play into that. One is, at its most banal and mundane, it's a shortcoming of mine because I just got used to what I was writing on those samples, and I liked the sound of it, and there are certain things which just won't translate into real players. The shortcomings of samplers, it's very hard for real players to imitate that. Mind you, I have seen drummers start to do breakbeats and stuff like that. Things a drummer would never play, they suddenly now playing. The other thing is I am constantly, my job is usually on movies that have a huge soundscape. So I'm not dealing with some sort of beautiful recording. I'm dealing with you got a huge, 100-foot high screen to fill, with huge big speakers, and you better fill the room. So I have to treat it like a rock and roll gig. So my soundscape is big, and the other thing is I come from rock and roll where the bass end is just more hyped than another thing, in a normal classical recording, and it's partly what I like. There's nobody else to blame other than myself.
Do you prefer to work in surround to have that sub?
I don't have a sub in my room. I learned this from, arguably the best dubbing engineer in town, this guy Andy Nelson, who actually he comes from rock and roll. He used to work with the Who, and on Thin Red Line we had this instrument, the sonic beam. Don't ask me; it'll be too long of a story. But the thing, just to illuminate what its power is. I remember walking towards the stage where we were recording it, and the street was vibrating slightly, and I thought, oh, Los Angeles, little earthquake. And then as I got closer, I realized it wasn't a little earthquake, it was the sonic beam just doing its thing. So Andy quite rightly said, so how am I going to go and get this to translate in the movie? Because this raw would just come at you. And I said, well, the sub, if he goes, no, you don't understand. I mean, most cinemas are all trying to be good, but most cinemas have a broken sub or something. It has to translate just on the normal speakers. If you can make it do that on the normal speakers. I don't have a sub because I just try to make it sound good on, but I do have surround, and I don't even understand why anybody would want to get out of bed and make a stereo recording. I mean, there's a thing that happens that when you can be inside the music, which is really what the surround thing does, which is just so much nicer. And I never, ever, ever listen to my soundtrack albums, and I can't stand it because half of the album is gone because half of the the experience is, for me, is being a participant in the middle of the music. Actually, on the Blu-ray version of Inception, we put some of the tracks just as 5.1, so you can actually, for the 3 people who have a great system at home, they can actually go and hear the music, the way I wrote it.
Do you find yourself as a fan of music? Do you find yourself listening to other soundtracks,
Sure.
and do you have any particular favorites?
Well, it's a tough question because as soon as you say favorites, my mind is just flooded with stuff I love. I mean, Ennio Morricone, John Williams. Just the other night we were listening to Witches of Eastwick. I mean, what a score! What writing! Great. Close Encounters is like, and I don't mean just the da 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 da. I mean the whole thing is like, one of the great pieces of 20th century music. Jerry Goldsmith, Bernard Herrmann, Randy Newman. Look, in the words of Duke Ellington, there are only 2 types of music, good and bad. I mean, there's so much stuff I love. And as soon as my mind goes, I have kids, and I'm always trying to think how are they going to get a comprehensive musical education, because there's so much out there. And I thought, it's actually, if you just stick with composers whose name starts with B, you're going to do fine. And you can, Beethoven, Bach, Bartok, Beatles, Burt Bacharach, B.B. King. I mean, just do the B's, and you're going to get a fairly, well-rounded, musical overview.
You'd hope they'd eventually get to Z, though.
No, I look, I don't care. I mean, look, honestly, I mean, the thing about writing this stuff is that I love the process. I love writing, and I love putting it all together, and I love the recording and production parts of it, but I don't sit there and go and listen to my own music. I mean, it's not like it bores the hell out of me, but since everything is yanked from my hands because we're either out of time or out of budget, you know, I can see vast room for improvement in every piece. And of course, the great thing about what I do is that I get to go over certain things again. You know, you start an idea on one movie, or you know, like you try to develop a musical language,